This is AI for literature reviews. I'm Justin Fuhrer. I'm a science librarian here at the University of Manitoba. And I just wanted to start with a territorial acknowledgement. So the University of Manitoba campuses are located on original lands of Anishinaabeg, Iniwak, Nissiniwak, Dakota Ute, and Dene, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So these are the three objectives that we're hoping you're able to do after watching this workshop. So identifying tasks in the literature review workflow to use AI tools. So knowing when to use AI tools when you're completing this kind of review. You'll be able to summarize the benefits and drawbacks of using these tools while you're working through your review. And then we'll also be able to validate AI-generated content. And I'll show you a couple tips on doing that closer to the end of the workshop. So here's our plan. I'll just have a brief intro to literature reviews, and then I'll walk you through how to use AI for different parts of your review, different steps. And well, yeah, throughout the workshop, I'll talk about the benefits and limitations of using AI. And we'll talk about verifying your sources, which is very important. And then I'll just recap three things that you'll want to remember after the workshop today. So we also have a co-host, Malin. She'll be watching the chat. So if you have any questions at any time, pop them in the chat. Anything about the workshop content or any tech issues, just message her or just put it in the general public chat. She'll answer those. Okay, just a very quick poll. We did this last week, but there's a slightly different group of people here. So just a couple questions. So if you go to menti.com and you enter the code 99222542, you can access the poll, and I'll switch over to that in a second here. Oops. There. Okay. Okay, so the code, if you still haven't joined, is just at the top, 99222542. So you can answer the question, I am comfortable using generative AI tools. Yes, no, maybe so. Need a lot of help. Few people need a lot of help. Some people, sort of. There's some pros in the audience here. There's some no's. Good thing you're in the workshop. Hoping to turn those no's to yes at the end of this. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm just going to skip to the next slide here. Okay, so which tools have you used? I have some examples here. We're going to cover some of these, most of these. And then if you've used any other ones, feel free to share in the chat. You don't have to, but lots of ChatGPT users here. Tons of dots flowing in there. Okay. Some illicit, some consensus. Those are going to be key in certain parts of our literature review, so make sure to cover those. Okay, great. And skipping, the dots are still flowing in. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to leave this slide up, so you can feel free to put questions in here throughout the presentation. I'll come back to this at the very end. This is nice because it's totally anonymous. So if you really didn't want other people, your name attached to the question by putting it in the Zoom chat, feel free to put it in here. It's totally anonymous. The Zoom chat works too, though. So whichever you're more comfortable with is great. Okay. Sorry, one sec. Okay, here we go. Okay, so to start off, what is a literature review? Well, Literature review is a summary and an explanation of the complete and current state of knowledge on a specific topic, typically using academic scholarship like books and journal articles, these types of sources. Okay, you're still needing a simpler explanation. Well, basically, you're summarizing literature that's been published already, things like books or journal articles or possibly other sources on a particular topic or research question. I say summarizing here just to make it simpler, but you're really engaging and critically examining these sources typically. So you kind of say, okay, the research has been gone in this direction with this study, and then another study added onto it, right? And then you're also kind of making a narrative over time. Really depends on what specific topic or research question you're looking into, and also what type of uh, product or output that you're writing. So you can have a literature review as a standalone um, journal article. Really, you could get it published, or it can form a part of an article that you're writing, or maybe a thesis or dissertation. Then it would be a particular section in a larger output or a larger publication. I like using this example. This is from a team of librarians who are writing about graduate students and their perceptions of research. So just at the bottom there, so they're talking about existing studies on this topic, right? Graduate research behaviors. And they looked at how these students were using library resources and search strategies to find sources. And they're citing the sources that they're using. So you can see those footnotes there, the 6, 7, 8. And they're identifying studies that have been doing these things, right? Studying the humanities. And then you have footnote number 7 or education, and you have footnote number 8. And they're engaging, right? They're summarizing these, and then they'll look at these maybe more in depth if I had included the rest of the literature review. But this is basically what you're doing with the literature review, right? Highlighted for extra emphasis there. So literature reviews, they give context to your research. You're summarizing the current state of knowledge in that area, right? You're situating the reader, okay? And then you're critically analyzing those sources to some degree. Like I'm saying, really that depends on how in depth your literature review is. That can really depend. And it can be, I already mentioned this 2 slides ago, it can be a section of your article, or it can be a standalone publication or standalone output. Okay, so if we boil literature review down, these are the basic steps. You're formulating a research question or topic or whatever it is you're looking into, right? That's the very first step. Having done that, you're going to need to search the literature to find what research has been done. What's been published on this topic already, different methodologies that line up with yours, different, research findings or results that have come up, major studies, maybe some minor studies. Really depends on what you're looking at and how long your literature review is. So you've found those. That's great. You've recognized that they're going to be useful or relevant for your review. Then you need to read and analyze those articles in depth. That's important because you're going to need to summarize those. You're going to need to critically analyze those in different ways. Then writing and citing 4 and 5 kind of go together, but I've separated them out here. But yeah, then you need to actually write your review, right? Okay, so these are the 5 basic steps. But how can we integrate AI into these steps? Okay. You can use AI in a number of different ways, and this is going to be the bulk of the workshop here. I'll walk you through each of these, so you don't need to memorize these or anything. I'll cover these in depth over the next hour here. So you're going to identify research gaps. You can use AI for that. You can use AI to come up with ideas for research questions. Maybe you need to have a more broad question or narrow your question a little bit. AI is really good for that. AI can help discover the sources that you're going to be using, that you're going to be summarizing and critically engaging, analyzing. You can also use AI to help summarize those academic papers. So the reading part, right? And figuring out, okay, what results came out of those? What are the major discussion points? I'll show you some very useful AI tools to do that. You can also use AI to help get yourself organized for your initial draft that you're going to be writing. I will caution this step. You have to be very careful when you're using some of these tools to make sure that whatever it is you're using in your review, you're not copying and pasting or using substantive wording from these tools in your actual writing. But we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Okay, so we're back to our steps in a literature review. So where do these pieces fit in? They were actually pretty much in order from when I listed them. Okay, so identify research gaps. That's really nice when you're thinking about formulating your question. Then you're coming up with an actual research question that you're looking into. That's also going to be important. That's the formulate your question piece, discovering academic sources, right? Searching, finding these things, figuring out what's relevant, what's not. AI tools can help with that. Summarizing academic papers can be really nice for step 3 when you're reading and analyzing and figuring out, okay, what am I actually going to be putting into my writing? Getting ideas for your initial draft is nice for the writing piece. Okay. I do want to, before we start to look at some of these tools, I just want you all to know AI in this context can really do some, but not all of your literature review. So you're still going to be doing the substantive pieces of these, right? Even though you, if you Google AI literature reviews, there's tons of videos on YouTube that's like, use AI to write your entire literature review. That's completely the wrong way to think about it. You won't be doing yourself any favors by cutting corners like that. I don't want to lecture anyone about AI because obviously we're in an AI session. It can be really useful, but really when we're talking about using AI for something like this, it's just to give you little extra pushes on each of these steps. Make sure that you're finding everything that you need to find, but AI can't replace you. It can't replace going to scholarly database, subject-specific databases, searching for articles, and really looking into these articles yourself, right? Downloading the PDFs, reading these things. Yeah. So that's just, I want you guys to leave with that. Okay, so the first step, identifying research gaps. So you'll want to know what your lit review will uncover before you start, even searching for things. You can search for things, do some background reading to help you think about, okay, what am I going to be looking at? What is my, the main topic of my review? Maybe you already know, right? You're writing your dissertation. You've already had a research proposal written up. You're at that stage, but maybe you're thinking of applying to grad school. You don't know what you're going to be writing on. Generative AI can help with this. It can help you formulate specific research questions, but before that, where could more research be done within the scope of what's been published already? So for each of these steps, I'm giving a couple example AI platforms or AI tools that you could use. So for this, more of the generative AI tools are very useful. The ones where you can ask it a question and it responds with text. So things like Gemini or Microsoft Copilot or Claude. or everyone's favorite ChatGPT. These are very useful tools for this step. I'll also mention at the very end, one of the last slides, I have hyperlinked all of these tools, so you don't have to remember each of these. I give you a link that brings you straight to the tool. So it kind of collects all that information for you on one slide, and you can just click through when you're thinking about using these different tools for these tasks. Okay, so identifying research gaps. So Maylin started last week along the same, using the same type of question. So you can pretend you're a food sciences graduate student. You're thinking of a literature review on taste and wine. Maybe you're writing, your dissertation on this or thesis of some kind, or maybe you're doing some, research in this area and you need to work on your literature review section. What are some of the areas where there is a gap in the current research? Thanks. So this is what I would put directly into ChatGPT in this case. This is the question that I put in. I also have links out to each of these shareable chats that I made with these tools. So when you have the slides, you can click those hyperlinks and it brings you straight to this question. So you can see it in more detail because these are just little screenshots of each of these. But I'll walk you through a little bit more in a second here on some different tools. Don't worry about reading all this. I've gathered together some of it at the end. The point is really just to show you how many different areas that it's coming up with just from such a simple question, really. Okay, then we have Claude here, same thing, right? Food sciences graduate student, lit review on taste and wine. I'm trying to come up with something that I want to do more research on. So Claude is suggesting potentially underexplored areas, neurobiological basis of wine expertise. That's kind of interesting. Cross-modal interactions in wine tasting. Okay, and individual differences in wine perception. Genetic variations, right? Kind of interesting. These probably won't all apply if I'm a food sciences graduate student and I have a particular area of interest, right? I maybe want to be a little bit more specific on what question I'm asking. Maybe one of these sparks my interest, and I'm going to say, give me more details on number one, right? Neurobiological basis of wine expertise. Okay, and here's the last example here, Gemini. Current gaps, right? Individual differences in taste and perception, influence of cultural background on the taste of wine, wine education on taste perception, right? So there's a huge variety of things I'm coming up with. So you can see how general it is. You'd really want to narrow down one of these, right, to go further on. These are just really just brainstorming. It's the very early stage. Okay, so what did we find? Neurological, neurological basis, neurobiological, genetic variation, right? Microbiome's role in the taste of wine, cross-cultural perception, non-traditional aging methods. I can't remember if that one was on the screenshot, but that popped up. When I was searching novice versus expert wine drinkers, that's kind of interesting. I've thought about that before. Price of wine and where it came from, interesting. Current technology, micro-oxygenation. I've never heard of that, but maybe I'd want to look more into that. New methods to measure wine taste, electronic tongues. I have no idea what that is, but maybe I'm really into like technology as a food sciences grad student, and I want to look more into this, right? Electronic tongues, interesting. So it's important to note, okay, so we have our big list. They're very general, but these aren't all research gaps. So Gen AI tools, they have specific date ranges on what they can dig up, right? There's limited access that they have to current research and or the internet. You'll need to do more digging into what you choose. You'll need to look more into, okay, what is, right? It's saying novice versus expert wine drinkers. Research gap? Really? I don't totally believe that. I would need to look more into that. really find an area that I would want to focus on. But it gives me a really good brainstorming, right? It just makes me think a little bit more, okay, what do I want to focus on? Okay, so generate research questions. We have, out of those, I want to focus on the price and the winery affecting the taste. So this is the area I want to focus on. I want to use some of these tools to get me a little bit closer to coming up with a research question. Some examples for these, you can use Perplexity or Copilot or Claude. Again, I have all these listed later on, and you can look at and try some of these out for yourself. There isn't really time during this session to do that, but I'll show you a little bit more detail in a second here. Okay, so Maylene covered this last week, but when you're, okay, so we've used it for just general brainstorming. That's great. But when we want to generate a specific research question, you really want to think about using a structure or framework of some kind. One of the most common ones or most popular ones right now is called CLEAR. It's made by a librarian in the States. He came up with it. And CLEAR stands for concise, logical, explicit, adaptive, and reflective. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I have a question here, right, I'm a food sciences grad student already, right? But now we have a particular area we're focusing on. Whether the winery or brand and cost of wine affects the perception of taste. Can you give me some research question examples that fill a gap in the current literature? It's short. It's only 3 sentences. Well, really 2 sentences. Okay? It's concise. Short, it's to the point. It's logical. It makes sense. I'm a food sciences graduate student, and I want to look at taste on, the perception of taste based on the winery and the cost of the wine. I'm explicit about what I want. Can you give me some research question examples? You need to tell the system or the tool what it is you're looking for. Maybe you don't know what you're looking for. In this case, for writing a literature review, okay, maybe you do. Just in general, maybe you don't. And you can also use these tools to brainstorm what it is you're looking for. But in this case, we're looking for a research question, so I specifically state that in there. Adaptive just refers to you reworking your question. So if you pop this into Gemini or Claude, or what was I said, Perplexity, you would get a response, right? But you need to look at that response and see if it got at what you're looking for. And if not, you need to rework your question. Like, for example, if I forgot to be explicit about what I was looking, research question examples, you need to recognize you forgot to do that. Obviously, we're looking at research questions, but it might be something else and you didn't actually specify that. And what comes out, the response you get really doesn't help you at all. You need to change that question, change your prompt to get a better response. You also need to think about, which is basically kind of like what I was just saying. But at the end of your prompting, did you get what you needed, right? Maybe okay, so then you specify research question examples, but what comes out is going to be research question examples. But are those something you can work with? If not, go back, right? Adapt, rework. But you need to think about whether you can work with whatever response it is you get. So it's important to remember. Anyways, there's the 5, right? Clear, concise, logical, explicit, adaptive, and reflective. If you have the slides, you can click that hyperlink. It brings you to the actual journal article that proposes this framework. Okay, there's my question. These are the responses I'm getting. How do the winery or brand and cost of wine interact to affect the perception of taste? I mean, that was pretty much what I asked. That might be nice. It's just phrases in a question. It's kind of nice. I like that, right? It's nice, concise. How does the level of wine expertise affect the perception of taste? Then we're getting into that kind of like education or expertise again. The cultural background, that came up before in our research gap, so that's something to think about. How does the setting in which the wine is consumed affect the perception of taste? Interesting. You can see how this is kind of like that first step too, where we're just trying to identify a gap, but now we're having it in a question, right? So how does something affect something else? This is exactly what I want, right? These are great examples. This one's in Claude. How does the presentation of the winery heritage information affect taste? Price point and sustainability certifications affect taste. And then Copilot. Same sort of things, but it just gives me some different examples. There might be one AI tool that you really like using, you're really comfortable with, stick with that. If it's not really working out for you, try one or more of the other examples, right? Because you can just copy and paste your question in. See if these are getting what it is you're after. Research question examples, these look like they are. Maybe I'd want to go more in depth with one or two of these, which would be great too. You can try them out, see how they work. You can always click on those hyperlinks. It brings you to the actual chat that these were taken from, that I ran, the prompts that I was running with these. Okay. Discover academic sources. This is a really great place to start using these tools, even if you already have your research question, you've kind of already done some searching already, but you're curious, whether you're starting out the searching process, but you'll need to do some digging besides using these tools. These definitely don't discover everything, but it's a nice add-on. It's a nice complement to your searching. You can use these tools to build a search query to differing degrees, differing accuracy, but you can try them out. You can use them to find literature, right? Which is really what I'm going to be showing you. And then after, I'll show you how to find similar articles through what's called citation chaining. So you use citations that are in the actual paper that you're looking at, so the references or works cited, and then also trying to find what has cited those works. These are really easy, or to do this is really easy with some of these tools. I'll show you in a second here. Okay, so when you're talking about discovering or searching for academic sources, and Maylin talked about this last week, there's something called retrieval augmented generation. This is slightly different from generative AI, where you're coming up with a prompt and what's coming back is either things like an image or maybe a video or more commonly a text response. Okay. When you're using your prompt in what's called a RAG or retrieval augmented generation system, you're coming up with sources or some kind of other content that the AI system is finding for you and presenting to you. Yeah, also known as discovering academic sources with AI. It's a fancy word for that. And when I think about these RAG AIs, uh, you can think about it in two categories. And I'll show you an example of each one just so you can wrap your head around when to use each of these. There's something called discovery systems. And so these are where you can pop in your research question, and what comes out is some sources and maybe a summary of those sources as well. That's really nice. I'll show you an example of Elicit in a second. What also is nice is that other piece we were talking about, citation mapping. So this, you can use a seed article and it'll show you and visualize the citations that are associated with that seed article. Both references or works cited, this is where we're talking about citation chaining, and cited by or other articles that cite that seed article, also known as using citations to visualize and find sources. These are really nice too. Each of these has their place when you're doing this literature search piece of your literature review, and I'll show you an example of each of these right now, I think. Yeah, okay. Okay, so you can follow along with that bit.ly elicit link. I'll just pop over. I have it loaded up already here. There we go. Sorry, one sec. Okay, everyone can see that. Please tell me if you can't. Anyways, I'm assuming everyone can see that. This is elicit. Elicit is really nice to do a number of things. It can do actually quite a few things, but we'll show you a couple right now. This is what happens when this is what you see when you sign in. So you can see I'm signed in at the top there. You can use your prompt to get what's called a research report. It's very nice. Takes a little while to generate those, so I'll show you an example of one that I did before. And then you can also use it to, well, I have a free account, so you can play along with these other tools if you pay for it, monthly or yearly fee. But the free version is quite powerful for complementing your literature review searching. So along with this research report, you can also use it to find papers. This is really nice because you have your research question already, right? We're looking at cost and the winery and how that affects the taste or perception of taste of the wine. And we can just pop that straight into here, right? Ask a research question. And I will do that here. Okay. How does the price and winery affect the perception of taste? Elicit also gives me some ways to modify this. Okay, so it's saying they always want to talk about wine experts versus casual consumers, but it gives you an example of specifying the population that you want to look at, but I don't want that, right? It also gives you an example, measurement precision. What is the impact of price point and winery reputation on subjective taste ratings in a blind taste test? That might be nice. I might want to try that. That's maybe a little bit more what I'm looking for. And then you can look at kind of these differences in the way that the experiments were run. I'm not going to read that all out, but right, it's just looking at, okay, how are these different things measured? Or controlled variations, right? And you can try those out. But for now, I'm just going to click search. It already says good research question. Well, yeah, they're always complimenting you using these things. Yeah. Okay, so price, winery, and taste perception. That's my search here, my prompt, the title of my prompt. And it gives me a summary of the top 4 papers. So it's finding a whole bunch of papers for me to look through. Really nice. I really like that. Because I have the free version, it's only giving me the top 4 papers. Okay, you could upgrade if you really like Elicit, you use it a lot, or you have some research funding and you're like, okay, I'm going to pay, whatever it is to subscribe to Elicit. That's great. You can see it gives me this nice summary here. Research consistently demonstrates, right? Price significantly influences wine quality perception. Okay, so there's been a lot of studies on this, it looks like. I might want to go back after reading this to the research question phase, talk with my supervisor if I'm a grad student, maybe, narrow down my research question a bit. But it gives me some summaries, right? This is basically what you would be writing-ish if you were writing a literature review, but do not copy and paste this, please. But it just gives me some really good insight into a little quick summary of the top 4 sources that it's finding. Okay, now this is really nice. It lists the papers that it's finding here. Got this great Roberta Veal article, Consumer Sensory Evaluations of Wine Quality, that the respective influence of price and country of origin. That to me seems extremely relevant. I would probably want to include this. Then we have, it's not great at showing the different titles sometimes. It depends on the data where it's drawing this from. Okay, when does the price affect the taste? Results from a wine experiment. That might be nice too, right? You can see it gives me an abstract summary. So abstracts are already very short, but this is even shortening them even more, just giving you a really quick overview of what this article is about in one sentence. That's nice. Okay, and so on, right? I'm not going to read them all out. What you can do, though, on the right-hand side, because I have the free version, I can't add tons of different columns, but you can choose to add these different columns. Now, I'm on a I'm on a different screen here, so it's hard to figure out how to scroll over. There we go. Okay. So I just added the main findings column. So now it's giving me, okay, it's trying to draw this from their conclusions. Okay, and right, you can play around with this. You can add, okay, what was the methodology that they used for these, okay, and I can scroll over more and it's gonna load up. It's gonna show me the methodology eventually once it figures that out. Okay, right? Methodology used, methodology not mentioned. The abstract does not provide a detailed description of the methodology. Okay, so I'll just finish this for a second. So you can keep adding those columns, right? Limitations or interventions that these different articles used or studies used. You can notice how that my column limit is reached. You can take away these columns and add on a different one if you want, but you just can't see them all at once or, if when you're on the free account. Okay, but I just want to draw your attention to that the abstract does not provide a detailed description of the methodology. So that's really important. Where Elicit is getting this information is from a big, huge database of open access articles called Semantic Scholar. Semantic Scholar only has open access or freely available articles in it. Okay, so it can't, well, Semantic Scholar also has, I shouldn't say that. The full text is only available in those freely available articles. Whereas if, and I know everyone here has had this happen, right? You try to read an article and it says you have to pay for it. There's a paywall. The University of Manitoba Libraries pays money for people to access these things if they're a student or faculty or staff. That's really great. But these systems can't access those. So if the information wasn't in the abstract, it's not going to be in this table. But if you start thinking about, okay, but then what about the main findings? Well, in some of these, it can bring out that information. And in some of these, it can't. It all depends on whether that information is freely accessible by these tools. So that's something to keep in mind. So when I'm saying you can use these tools to complement your literature review, this is one of the limitations. It's really nice. It gives me a lot of information. It gets me, at least highlights these articles, gives me a summary, maybe some methodologies or research findings. But at the end of the day, I'm going to need to do some more digging into these. Okay. So let's just say I really want to look at this Roberta Veal P. Quester article. This one looks really good. This abstract is really nice, has a lot of detail. That's why, at least part of the reason why Elicit can grab me all the, how they ran their experiment. You can do a couple things at this point. You can go to the DOI, fancy word for a permanent URL or a permanent link, and this will take me straight to the article where I can then either search for it in our library search to get access to it, or maybe it's open access, or maybe I use Lean Library browser extension to access it. You can ask me or Maylin more about that if you're curious. I can also click on open source in new tab. So I'm going to do that. This brings me to the Semantic Scholar database, what I was talking about earlier. You can see they have tons and tons and tons of different papers, millions and millions of papers. That's really nice. Semantic Scholar will show me A lot of different things, but it's one of the ways you can do citation mapping, like we were talking about before. So it shows me all of the citations that have cited this article. It also shows me all of the references that are used by Roberta Veal and her co-author. Brings me down to that section. And it can do a lot of other things, right? Related papers, maybe something like this. I'm using the effective extrinsic cues on willingness to pay of wine. Pay of wine. Anyways, this can give you maybe some other papers that you're looking for. These ones, malleability of taste perception, biasing effects of rating scale formats, and willingness to pay. Maybe that would be relevant. I'd have to look at it. A multivariate model of perceived quality in a developing country. It doesn't even say anything about wine, but maybe I would want to look at something like that. I'm not sure. That's really nice. Nice tool. Yeah, if you're at all interested more in Elicit or some of these other tools, you can play around with them. But for now, okay, we're gonna go back here. Okay, citation mapping. This Research Rabbit is kind of similar to Semantic Scholar, where it's giving you a lot of different information based on references and based on citations. So I can load my Roberta Veal article into Research Rabbit. Gives me the abstract there again. I've already read that like 3 or 4 times. Don't want that. And then you can go and you can click on these different pieces. So I'm interested in looking at similar work. So that's what I selected there. It's giving me over 2,000 results. So that's a lot to look through. I probably don't want all of that. You can also click on citations and it'll only show you those 62 citations. And then it lists them in that third column. But right now we're looking at similar work. And then it actually visualizes the connections between these articles. Some of the bigger circles are the more cited ones or cited by this collection. If I was looking at it in a little more detail, you can modify that map. You can zoom in, you can scroll over to get summaries of each of these articles. It's really nice. Research Rabbit's a nice option if you have a seed article already that you want to look at. Okay, we could probably have an entire session just on discovering academic sources, but got to keep rolling here. Actually, got to keep rolling a little quicker. Summarizing academic papers. So you can use these tools here to summarize, your sources to get a quick summary of the evidence, a methodology, or findings. There's a couple platforms that I've highlighted: ChatPDF, PDF AI, Summarize. There's something called SciSummary, which you have to pay for, but it could be nice if you do this a lot. There's also a number of browser extensions that you can use, things like Google Scholar PDF extension. Adobe Reader has a option to summarize, or there's something called Perplexity AI Companion, which you can use alongside Perplexity, which is its own AI system. Okay, so I know this is very small on your screen. Malin's gonna pop in. Don't worry about filling it out. I don't know if I don't have time to look at the results, but you can look at these in a little more depth if you're at all interested. These are just 3 examples of summaries that you can generate. So we're going back to Roberta Veal. We're going back to different article, Sensing or Knowing, Investing the Influence of Knowledge and Self-Confidence on Consumer Beliefs Regarding the Effect of Extrinsic Cues on Wine Quality. I probably want to know more about this because it really has to do with my research question. I would use one of these if I was in a hurry and I couldn't read this entire article. It's not actually that long. It's 14 pages. And probably some of those pages are the works cited or the references section. Maybe I would read this. but I'm in a super hurry. I'm a very busy grad student, and I want a quick summary of this just to know whether it's relevant to me or not, because the title sure makes it seem like it would be relevant to my research question. So you can use these different tools. Post summarize. Post summarize, I didn't actually upload the PDF. So Chat PDF and PDF AI, I uploaded this actual article to its system. So I accessed it, I downloaded the PDF, and I uploaded it onto these systems. Post summarize, I sent Poe a link. So I sent Poe that DOI link, doi.org, that big URL at the end of the citation there. And why does this matter? Well, Chat PDF and PDF AI, there's limits on how much you can get summaries, or how many, what am I saying? There's limits to how many summaries you can get or how many PDFs you can upload based on these. That might be problematic if you're trying to summarize a whole lot of stuff. Poe Summarize was nice because it just looks at the link, but I'll show you why that's problematic in a second. Chat PDF and PDF AI, you can ask these systems follow-up questions. So if you go to the link that Maylin posted, you don't have to vote on one. I was just curious which one you guys would prefer. But if you don't want to vote, it doesn't matter. But the thing to notice is you can ask follow-up questions. You can go into more detail on some of these. Post summarize is going to be a lot more limited when you're talking about this. But then again, you can look at more summaries. So it all depends on what exactly you're using these things for. But there's another problem. Okay. It's important to note, Poe can't get behind a paywall. Poe is limited to the abstract in this case. Chat PDF and PDF AI, I uploaded the PDF to those systems. Post summarize, I couldn't, well, I'm just showing, you can do that in the system, but I didn't want to in this case. But if you just give it a link, you can't get through there. So I ask, how did you come up with this? Or is this the full findings? Poe reveals he didn't, or Poe, the non-human AI system, didn't tell me this originally, but it says I don't have access to the full content, full article content. I generated the summary based solely on the abstract and the metadata provided in the URL I shared. I keep saying Poe can't can access paywall journal articles, okay? It doesn't tell you that originally though, and most of these systems won't. You have to know that. So if the article is not open access, or even if it is, sometimes these systems can't get through that. It's gonna be problematic because it's just gonna be the abstract that it's summarizing, but it looks like it's the entire article. You'll need to know that. So keep an eye out for that for sure. You can add these browser extensions to Safari or Firefox or Google Chrome or whatever you're using. You can then actually just use these straight when you're looking at the article in the browser, in your browser, like during the search process. So this might be useful if you're just want to incorporate AI, AI summaries into your workflow. Could be a little less work than getting the full text of something and then uploading it to Chat PDF. Chat PDF then has a bunch of limit restrictions because I'm using the free account. These are a couple really great options to use. Okay, so we found our sources. We've read them. Now we need to piece them together. Again, be wary of using these tools to write your review. I would suggest do not do that. This is considered plagiarism. It's taken very seriously at the university. But these systems can be useful for organizing, brainstorming at the beginning of the writing stage, which can be nice. Gave some examples there that you can look at a little more in depth. So remember, using AI to produce writing or art is like asking someone at the gym to lift weights for you. The effort is the point, right? You wouldn't go to a gym. Yeah, anyways, Andy, Just kind of saying what I said at the very beginning there. These tools are meant to complement your work, not do the work for you. Okay. Creating an initial draft. This is one in Poe. I gave it my research question and a couple sources, and it's giving me an example of how I would structure, literature review. This is very detailed. Introduction, theoretical framework, brand and winery reputation, price and taste perception. I would probably want to organize mine in a slightly different way. This gives me a really great starting point, though. Just you can see how broad it is, right? It's not very specific. It's not really doing the work for you. You're having to put these sources into the, appropriate section or subsection. You can also use tools like Copilot so in this case, I gave Copilot two sources. And I said, how do I link these together? Or how are they similar? How are they different, right? Both studies highlight the importance of sensory and perceptual attributes in shaping consumer evaluations of food products. So one looks at, this quality of food product, and, the second paper complements this by doing this, right? Extrinsic factors, packaging design, and how this can affect taste. This might be nice. And then it's actually offering me, okay, do I need more detailed insights or help with a specific section, right? I am not copying and pasting this together, but it just gives me some points that maybe I could focus on. Extrinsic, but see how the first one talks about intrinsic and extrinsic. And you can, right, that gives me just a little bit of a starting point to look at the first paper versus the second paper, right? How I can link these together. You want to use different tools for different tasks. And I have a slide at the very end here that just shows the different tools. So you can look at those. You can see that they're organized in the different steps. A lot of these you can use for a lot of these different tasks, but some are really specific. Okay, so I really want to hammer this point home because you need to cite your sources. Yes, this does include the use of AI tools, especially if used directly in your paper. I highly discourage that. You should not be doing that. Yeah. Anyways, use AI tools. Also, you can use these to help format your citations. You need to double check, make sure it's in the right format though. But it can get you a little bit of the way there. Again, it's complementing a task that you would be doing, making it a bit easier, but you're going to have to lift the weights and double check that your APA citation is in APA format, 7th edition, of course. You can also get a librarian to help you with this, to verify sources, to help you format a source if you're really having trouble, or if you have questions about citing AI tools, right? You can read more about academic integrity at the U of M. I hyperlinked it there if you have the slides. Okay, so citing AI tools, it's very important. If any wording is used in your final paper, again, I wouldn't suggest doing that at all. Just use these tools. Brainstorming, but I'm not using the actual wording or substantive ideas in my paper. If I do, make sure to cite it. And it's also a good practice, especially if you're doing a entire literature review, but it's good practice to mention in your methods section that you used AI to find literature or how exactly you use the AI tools in the making of your in your literature review. You can see more about citing. The library has a library guide on citing AI. It can be very useful. It gives you a lot of great examples on when and how to cite these tools in your work. This is an example of citing ChatGPT in APA format. Again, you can go to the library guide and find a lot more information on that. Okay, final thing I'm going to say, verify your sources. You can do this using our library search. See if the source actually exists. That can be a problem. You may need to know this coming up, right? In a couple slides. And cross-check with other scholarly sources. Semantic Scholar is really nice with that because it actually shows you the citation in context. So is it agreeing or disagreeing with the source that you're looking at? And how, right? Was it used as a background citation to give background to something? Was it using the design or methodology of that source that it's citing? You can use Semantic Scholar to do that. If a tool gives you a link, you can click to check that source. I highly recommend that. See what information is coming in that response from that source and how that information is being used. Very important. You'll want to remember to verify your sources and maintain academic integrity. Okay, very quickly here. We have a AI sleuths, AI detectives mystery. So in the first workshop, Maylin presented a case. Okay, it was code breakers. Now you have the case of the vanishing document, and there's going to be a third case coming up next week. It's going to be very interesting. You're not going to want to miss it. And we have prizes for the people that answer all of these clues or solve these cases correctly for all 3 weeks. So the case of the vanishing document, in this case, Professor Claude needs your help to determine which of her students' given citations are fake, are phantom citations. You need to use your knowledge to determine which student citations are fake. These are the citations. You don't need to remember these at all. They're on the response quiz that Maylin will post the link in the chat right away. That will have these 3 citations. You need to figure out which ones are fake, which ones are real, and send your answer to that. If you answer all 3 weeks worth of cases, if you solve that, you become an AI detective yourself, you get your badge, and you also get some amazing prizes too, I will say. So the link's there. Okay, 3 things to remember from this session. AI can do some things, but not all things for your literature review. You're using different tools for different tasks based on the strengths of each tool. Again, I give some examples at the end here. Then you're verifying your sources and you're making sure to maintain academic integrity throughout your paper when using these AI tools. Here's some resources you can look at, including that Leo S. Lowe article on clear prompting. Also, we used AI tools to help us create this presentation. So look at that, AI disclosure statement. Brainstorm and outlining was used for this. Okay, so here's the master table of tools that I looked at or suggested. We didn't look at all of these in the session. These can help with these different tasks that I've outlined. There's other tasks that you can use these things for in a literature review. These are just the 5 that we decided to focus on for this session. Each one has its strengths. Each one has its weaknesses. Play around with them. If you have any questions, be sure to email me or Maylin. We can help you out with using these.